Welcome to the MasterMind Library. Welcome to the MasterMind Library, the home of the MasterMind Book Club on FHTII.com. I'm Ferdinand, the bringer of balance, leader of many disciplines, and your host. We'll be reading from Psycho Cybernetics. Tune in and let's grow together. Please share and comment. Gratitude. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and get our virtual book up so we can go ahead and get started with our reading. Today, we're on the very last chapter of Psycho Cybernetics. All right. Congratulations to everybody who's been following along. We're almost there. All right. It's chapter 15, last day of Psycho Cybernetics. Tomorrow, we start the Enuma Elish, the epic of creation. All right. Chapter 15. More years of your life and more life in your years. Does every human have a built-in fountain of youth? Can the success mechanism keep you going? Does the failure mechanism accelerate the aging process? Frankly, medical science does not have any final answer to these questions. But it is not only possible, but I believe practical, to draw certain conclusions and implications from what is already known. In this chapter, I would like to tell you some of the things that I believe and which have been of practical value to me. William James once said that everyone, scientists included, develops his own overbeliefs concerning known facts, which the facts themselves do not justify. As a practical measure, these overbeliefs are not only permissible, but necessary. Our assumption of a future goal, which sometimes we cannot see, is what dictates our present actions and our practical conduct. Columbus had to assume that a great landmass lay to the westward before he could discover it. Otherwise, he would not have sailed at all, or having sailed, would not have known whether to set his course to the south, east, north, or west. Scientific research is possible. Scientific research is possible only because of faith in assumptions. Research experiments are not helter-skelter or aimless, but directed and goal-oriented. The scientist must first set up a hypothetical truth, a hypothesis not based upon fact, but upon implications, before he can know which experiments to make or where to look for facts, which may prove or disprove his hypothetical truth. In this last chapter, I want to share with you some of my own overbeliefs, hypotheses, and philosophy, not as an MD, but as a man. As Dr. Hans Selye has said, there are certain truths which cannot be used by medicine, but can be used by the patient. Life force, the secret of healing and the secret of youth. I believe that the physical body, including the physical brain and nervous system, is a machine composed of numerous smaller mechanisms, all purposeful or goal directed. I do not believe, however, that man is a machine. I believe that the essence of man is that which animates this machine, that which inhabits this machine, directs and controls it, and uses it as a vehicle. Man himself is not the machine, any more than electricity is the wire over which it flows, or the motor which it turns. I believe that the essence of man is what Dr. J.B. Ryan calls extraphysical. His life or vitality, his consciousness, his intelligence and sense of identity, that which he calls I. For many years, individual scientists, psychologists, physiologists, biologists have suspected that there was some sort of universal energy or vitality which ran the human machine, and that the amount of this energy available and the way it was utilized explain why some individuals were more resistant to disease than others, why some individuals aged faster than others, and why some hardy individuals lived longer than others. It was also fairly obvious that the source of this basic energy, whatever it might be, with something other than the surface energy we obtain from the food we eat. Caloric energy. Caloric energy does not explain why one individual can snap back quickly from a serious operation or withstand long continued stress situations or outlive another. We speak of such persons as having a strong constitution. Some years ago, Dr. J.A. Hadfield wrote, "It is true that we do store up a certain amount of energy derived physiologically from the nutriment of food and air. But several of the greatest psychologists, and in particular, those clinical psychologists who have to deal with the actual diseases of men, have tended towards the view that the source of power is to be regarded as some impulse that works through us and is not of our own making. What Janet calls mental energy is a force which ebbs in the neurasthenic and flows in the healthy man. Jung speaks of libido or urge as a force which surges through our lives, now as an impulse towards nutrition, now as the sexual instinct. There is also the elan vital of Bergson. These views suggest that we are not merely receptacles, but channels of energy. Life and power is not so much contained in us, it courses through us. Man's might is not to be measured by the stagnant water in the well, but by the limitless supply from the clouds of heaven. Whether we are to look upon this impulse as cosmic energy, as a life force, or what may be its relation to the divine immanence in nature, it is for other investigators to say. J.A. Hadfield, The Psychology of Power, The Macmillan Company, New York. Science discovers the life force. Today, this life force has been established as a scientific fact by Dr. Hans Selye of the University of Montreal. Since 1936, Dr. Selye has studied the problems of stress. Clinically and in numerous laboratory experiments and studies, Dr. Selye has proved the existence of a basic life force which he calls adaptation energy. Which he calls adaptation energy. Throughout life, from the cradle to the grave, we are daily called upon to adapt to stress situations. Even the process of living itself, constitutes stress or continual adaptation. Dr. Selye has found that the human body contains various defense mechanisms, local adaptation syndromes or LAS, which defend against specific stress, and a general defense mechanism, general adaptation syndrome or GAS, which defends against nonspecific stress. Stress includes anything which requires adaptation or adjustment, such as extremes of heat or cold, invasion by disease germs, emotional tension, the wear and tear of living, or the so called aging process. The term adaptation energy, says Dr. Selye, has been coined for that which is consumed during continued adaptive work to indicate that it is something different from the caloric energy we receive from food. But this is only a name, and we still have no precise concept of what this energy might be. Further research along these lines would seem to hold great promise, since here we appear to touch upon the fundamentals of aging. Hans Selye, The Stress of Life, McGraw-Hill Book Company, New York, 1956. Dr. Selye has written 12 books and hundreds of articles explaining his clinical studies and his stress concept of health and disease. It would be a disservice to him for me to try to prove his case here. Suffice it to say that his findings are recognized by medical experts the world over. And if you wish to learn more of the work which led to his findings, I suggest that you read Dr. Selye's book, written for laymen, The Stress of Life. To me, the really important thing that Dr. Selye has proved is that the body itself is equipped to maintain itself in health, to cure itself of disease, and to remain to cure itself of disease and to remain youthful by successfully coping with those factors which bring about what we call old age. Not only has he proved that the body is capable of curing itself, but that in the final analysis, that is the only sort of cure there is. Drugs, surgery, and various therapies work largely by either stimulating the body's own defense mechanism when it is deficient, or toning it down when it is excessive. The adaptation energy itself is what finally overcomes the disease, heals the wound or burn, or wins out over other stressors. Is this the secret of youth? The Elon Vital, life force, or adaptation energy, call it whatever you will, manifests itself in many ways. The energy which heals a wound is the same energy which keeps all other body organs functioning. When this energy is at an optimal, all our organs function better. We feel good. Wounds heal faster. We are more resistant to disease. We recover from any sort of stress faster. We feel and act younger. And in fact, biologically, we are younger. It is thus possible to correlate the various manifestations of this life force and to assume that whatever works to make more of this life force available to us, whatever opens to us a greater influx of life force, of life stuff, whatever helps us utilize it better, literally helps us all over. We may conclude that whatever non-specific therapy aids wounds to heal faster might also make us feel younger. Whatever non-specific therapy helps us overcome aches and pains might, for example, improve eyesight. And this is precisely the direction which medical research is now taking and which appears most promising. Science's search for the elixir of youth. By far, the most interesting and the most promising field of medical research today is the search for a nonspecific therapy which will help man all over, immunize him from or help him overcome any disease, in contrast to specific or localized therapies for this disease or that disease. Notable progress has already been made in the field. ACTH and cortisone are examples of nonspecific therapies. They benefit not just one or two pathologic conditions, but a whole host of diseases by operating through the body's own general defense mechanism. Bogomolets gained worldwide renown in the late 1940s with his youth serum, made from spleen and bone marrow, which was widely hailed by magazine writers, but not by Bogomolets himself as a cure all for all diseases. Currently, Dr. Paul Nihans of Switzerland is famous for his cellular therapy for all diseases, including the degenerative diseases commonly associated with old age. Nihans has used CT on Pope Pius XII, Chancellor Konrad Adenauer of West Germany, and many other famous people. Some 500 doctors in Europe now use CT in treating every manner of disease. The treatment itself is rather simple. Embryonic animal tissue is obtained fresh from a slaughterhouse. These new and young cells are then made into a tissue extract and injected into the patient. If the liver is malfunctioning, embryonic animal liver cells are used. If the kidneys are ailing, kidney tissue is used. Although no one knows just why, there can be no doubt that some rather startling cures have been obtained. The theory is that these young cells somehow bring new life to the ailing human organ. And resistance to disease? My own overbelief about CT is that it brings improvement and new vitality for quite another reason. The studies of proof, Henry R. Sims of the College of Physicians and Surgeons, Columbia University, Dr. John H. Heller of the New England Institute for Medical Research at Ridgefield, Connecticut, Dr. Sanford O. Byers of the Mount Zion Hospital in San Francisco, and other researchers working independently strongly suggest that the real key to both longevity and resistance to disease is to be found in the functioning of the cells which make up the body's connective tissue, known as the reticuloendothelial system, or RES. RES is present in every body, in every part of the body. in the skin, the organs, the bones. Dr. Selly describes connective tissue as the cement which holds the body cells together and connects the various cells of the body with each other. Rest also performs a number of other important functions. It acts as a protective lining or shield. It envelopes, immobilizes, and destroys foreign invaders. And foreign invaders. Writing in the New York Times, William L. Lawrence said, "This knowledge of the protective role of the RES has opened up a new line of research that could lead to one of the most revolutionary developments in medicine. The aim is to provide artificial stimulation to the activity of the RES cells by chemical and immunological methods. Instead of combating disease individually, the chemical stimulation of the body's own natural resistance system would thus provide a biological defense against disease in general, infectious as well as non-infectious, including the degenerative diseases that strike the greatly increasing older age groups. Such an approach would, indeed, serve as a check against the aging process itself, keeping the individual at a younger age level by checking the rate of loss of his general resistance. RES controls growth and anti growth factors. Dr. Kurt Stern of the Chicago Medical School has found that RES cells also have a control effect on the growth and anti growth mechanisms within the body. RES at present looks like the best bet as the body's own built in fountain of youth. When RES is functioning properly, more life stuff or adaptation energy seems to be made available. RES is activated by threats, injuries, etc. It has been found to be much more active. For example, during infection, when the body needs additional defense. As Dr. Selly has pointed out, the body's general defense mechanism is sometimes shocked into increased activity by general stress, infection, electric shock, insulin shock, a harrowing experience, etc. My own overbelief is that this is the mechanism through which Dr. Nihan's cellular therapy works, not because new liver cells activate the liver to grow young, but because the introduction into the system of a foreign protein shocks the RES into activity. It has long been known that the body reacts rather violently, and quite often death results from the injection of foreign proteins. Dr. Nihan's young cells do not seem to have this effect, possibly because they are young and possibly because the extract is attenuated. I believe, however, that any mild innocuous foreign protein would stimulate the RES into activity, just as injection of innocuous smallpox germs will stimulate the body to produce antibodies against virulent, virulent smallpox. Perhaps the claims of Dr. Aslan of Bucharest that injections of a form of Novocaine, H3, which appears to make old people feel younger, may be due to some chemical in the disintegration of H3 in the body, which stimulates the RES. Nonspecific therapy for wound healing made patients feel younger. Salves, unguents, antibiotics, etc., are used as specific therapy on wounds. Back in 1948, I began experimenting with a nonspecific therapy in the form of a serum, which I hoped might accelerate the healing of surgical wounds. The results of these experiments were published in the Journal of Immunology, Volume 60, Number 3, November 1948, if you are interested in the technical details. Studies in cellular growth, effect of anti-granulation tissue serum on wound healing in mice by Maxwell Maltz. The hypothesis which led up to these experiments was as follows. If you cut your finger, if you cut your finger, two different mechanisms within the body go to work to heal the wound. Acting through the RES, one mechanism, called the granulation factor, stimulates the growth of entirely new cells to form new tissue, which we call scar tissue. The cells so created are biologically young. Another mechanism, also operating through RES, acts as a control or anti-granulation factor. It is an anti-growth mechanism and inhibits the production of new cells. Otherwise, the scar tissue would continue to grow until your finger became perhaps as long as your leg. These two mechanisms work together simultaneously to achieve just the right amount of new growth. One acts as a sort of negative feedback or governor on the other. If there is, at the moment, an excess of the growth factor, this seems to stimulate anti growth factor. On the other hand, a slight excess of the anti growth factor, which the excess of the anti growth factor should act as negative feedback to activate the growth factor, very much like the thermostat in your home maintains the right temperature. An excess of cold turns on the furnace to bring more heat and an excess of heat turns off the furnace to lower the temperature. This back and forth, nip and tuck sort of control is active while healing is going on, but discontinues when the healing job has been completed. Some overall then gives anti growth the upper hand and the formation of scar tissue stops altogether. Thus, there should be more anti granulation stuff present in the final stages of healing, in the scab, which has already completed its growth. Anti-growth serum made wounds heal faster. My anti-granulation tissue serum was made from the scrapings of newly formed but full-grown granulation tissue of a healing wound, which, after being suspended in solution, was injected into rabbits to stimulate them to react against this granulation tissue. Theoretically, this serum containing an abundance of anti-granulation factor should stimulate the granulation factor in a fresh wound and make for a faster growth of scar tissue, making use of the same principle that you could use to turn on your furnace, that is, by lowering the temperature around the thermostat. That is precisely what did happen. In general, these experiments showed that wounds inflicted on laboratory mice required an average of about 8 days to heal completely when no serum was given, and required about 5 days in another group of mice which received an injection of anti-granulation tissue serum, AGTS. The serum, injected into the mouse at the point furthest from the wound, accelerated healing by about 40%. As might as might have been expected, overdoses of AGTS have the opposite effect and retarded the healing time. These results were encouraged and led to further refinement of the serum for human use. At the time, I began using the serum on human patients. I had no other hope than that it might accelerate the healing of surgical wounds. There are millions of women in the middle-aged group who have held down jobs for 20 years or more who suddenly meet the competition of younger people despite their experience and competence. Many of them have come for surgical help to remove the signs of age from their eyelids and face to make them look younger and hold on to their jobs for another 10 years. It means economic, psychological, and social survival. Naturally, in this age group, some do not heal as well as others, and these slow healers received my AGTS serum. What I had not anticipated, however, was the number of patients who received the serum and returned several months later to report that they felt younger, had more pep and energy, and that some of their aches and pains had disappeared. In some of these patients, the change in physical appearance was quite striking. There was a sparkle in the eye that had not been there a few months before. The texture of the skin appeared smoother. They stood straighter and walked with a more confident step. As a doctor, I draw no conclusions from this. Medical facts must be substantiated by more than a patient's subjective feelings or the casual observation of his doctor. To prove anything, numerous experiments would have to be made under control, conditions, and scientific observation. As a layman, however, I do believe that these experiences tend to confirm my belief that any factor, emotional, mental, spiritual, pharmaceutical, which stimulates the life force within us has a beneficial effect, not only locally, but generally. And as a layman, I also believe that perhaps I have come closer to a possible breakthrough in the quest for longer life through the use of AGTS. Granulation tissue is newborn connective tissue, newborn RES, biologically, a rebirth of life in a local area. AGTS produced from such a biological entity should stimulate the RES in a more natural way than any chemical substance. How your thoughts, attitudes, and emotions act as nonspecific therapy. I began to look for other factors or common denominators, which might explain why the surgical wounds of some patients heal faster than others. The serum worked better for some people than for others. This in itself was food for thought because the results obtained in mice were practically uniform. Ordinarily, mice do not worry or become frustrated. Frustration and emotional stress can be induced in mice. However, by immobilizing them so that they cannot have freedom of movement. Immobilization frustrates any animal. Laboratory experiments have shown that under the emotional stress of frustration, very minor wounds may heal faster, but any real injury is made worse, and healing sometimes made impossible. It has also been established that the adrenal glands react very much the same way to emotional stress and to the stress of physical tissue damage. How the failure mechanism injures you. Thus, it might be said that frustration and emotional stress, those factors we have previously described as the failure mechanism, literally add insult to injury whenever the physical body suffers damage. If the physical damage is very slight, some emotional stress may stimulate the defense mechanism into activity. But if there is any real or actual physical injury, emotional stress adds to and makes it worse. This knowledge gives us reason to pause and think. If aging is brought about by a using up of our adaptation energy, as most experts in the field seem to think, then our indulging ourselves in the negative components of the failure mechanism can literally make us old before our time. Philosophers have long told us, and now medical researchers confirm that resentment and hatred hurt us more than the person we direct them against. What is the secret of rapid healers? Among my human patients who did not receive the serum were some individuals who responded to surgery just as well as the average patient did who received it. Differences in age, diet, pulse rate, blood pressure, etc., simply did not explain why. There was, however, one easily recognizable characteristic which all the rapid healers had in common. They were optimistic, cheerful, positive thinkers who not only expected to get well in a hurry, but invariably had some compelling reason or need to get well quick. They had something to look forward to, and not only something to live for, but something to get well for. I've got to get back on the job. I've got to get out. I've got to get out of here so I can accomplish my goal, were common expressions. In short, they epitomized those characteristics and attitudes which I have previously described as the success mechanism. I am not alone in these observations. Dr. Clarence William Lieb says, experience has taught me to regard pessimism as a major symptom of early fossilization. It usually arrives with the first minor symptom of physical decline. Clarence William Lieb, Outwitting Your Years, Prentice Hall, Incorporate, Inglewood Cliffs, New Jersey. Dr. Lieb adds, tests have been made of the effect of personality disturbances on convalescence. One hospital showed that the average duration of hospitalization was increased by 40% from this cause. It is interesting to note that the figure, 40%, is almost identical with the results of my own experiments with AGTS. Could it be that induced optimism confidence, faith, cheerfulness, emotional stasis might work quite as well as AGTS in accelerating healing and in keeping us younger. Is our success mechanism a sort of built in youth serum which we can use for more life, more energy? Thoughts bring organics as well as functional changes. We do know this much. Mental attitudes can influence the body's healing mechanisms. Placebos, or sugar pills, capsules containing inert ingredients, have long been a medical mystery. They contain no medicine of any kind, which could bring about a cure. Yet, when placebos are given to a control group in order to test the effectiveness of a new drug, the group receiving phony pills nearly always shows some improvement, and quite often as much as the group receiving the medicine. Students receiving placebos actually showed more immunization against colds than the group receiving a new cold medicine. In 1946, the New York Journal of Medicine carried an account of a roundtable discussion of placebos by members of the Department of Pharmacology and Medicine of Cornell University Medical College. Improvement reported by patients included cure of insomnia, better appetite. It makes me stronger. My bowels are better. I can walk farther without pain in my chest. Evidence was presented to show that placebos had worked in some cases, just as effectively as vaccines against chronic rheumatoid arthritis. During World War II, the Royal Canadian Navy tested a new drug for seasickness. Group 1 received the new drug. Group 2 received sugar pills, and only 13% suffered from seasickness, while 30% of Group 3, which received nothing, got sick. Many doctors now believe that a similar type of suggestive treatment is the best form of therapy for warts. The warts are painted with methylene, blue, red ink, or any other color, and a colored light is used to treat them. The Journal of the American Medical Association has said the facts of the suggestive therapy of warts seem to make a strong case in favor of the reality of such a process. Suggestion explains nothing. Patients receiving placebos or suggestive wart therapy must not be told that the treatment is a phony if it is to be effective. They believe they are receiving legitimate medicine which will bring about a cure. To write off placebos as merely due to suggestion explains nothing. More reasonable is the conclusion that in taking the medicine, some sort of expectation of improvement is aroused. A goal image of health is set up in the mind, and the creative mechanism works through the body's own healing mechanism to accomplish the goal. Do we sometimes think ourselves into old age? We may do something very similar, but in reverse, when we unconsciously expect to get old at a certain age. At the 1951 International Gerontological Congress at St. Louis, Dr. Raphael Ginsburg of Cherokee, Iowa, stated that the traditional idea that a person is supposed to grow old and useless around 70 is responsible in large measure for persons growing old at that age, and that in a more enlightened future, we might regard 70 as middle age. It is a matter of common observation that some people between the ages of 40 and 50 begin to look and act old, while others continue to act and look young. A recent study found that the oldsters at 45 thought of themselves as middle aged, past their prime, over the hill, while the youngsters at 45 still conceived of themselves as being this side of middle aged. At least two ways suggest themselves as to how we may think ourselves into old age. Inexperience to grow old, in expecting to grow old at a given age, we may unconsciously set up a negative goal image for our creative mechanism to accomplish. Or, in expecting old age and fearing its onset, we may unwittingly do those very things necessary to bring it about. We begin to taper off on both physical and mental activity, cutting out practically all vigorous physical activity. We tend to lose some of the flexibility of our joints. Lack of exercise causes our capillaries to constrict and virtually disappear. and the supply of life giving blood through our tissues is drastically curtailed. Vigorous exercise is necessary to dilate the capillaries, which feed all body tissues and remove waste products. Dr. Selly has cultivated animal cell cultures within a living animal's body by implanting a hollow tube. For some unknown reason, biologically, new and young cells form inside this tube. Untended, however, they die within a month. However, if the fluid in the tube is washed daily and waste products removed, the cells live indefinitely. They remain eternally young and neither age nor die. Dr. Selly suggests that this may be the mechanism of aging, and that if so, old age can be postponed by slowing down the rate of waste production or by helping the system to get rid of waste. In the human body, the capillaries are the channels through which waste is removed. It has definitely been established that lack of exercise and inactivity literally dries up the capillaries. Activity means life. When we decide to curtail mental and social activities, we stultify ourselves. We become set in our ways, bored, and give up our great expectations. I have no doubt, I have no doubt, but that you could take a healthy man of 30 and within 5 years make an old man of him if you could somehow convince him that he was now old, that all physical activity was dangerous, and that mental activity was futile. If you could induce him to sit in a rocking chair all day long, give up all his dreams for the future, give up all interest in new ideas, and regard himself as washed up, worthless, unimportant, and non-productive, I am sure that you could experimentally create an old man. Dr. John Schindler, in his famous book, How to Live 365 Days a Year, Prentice Hall, Incorporate, Englewood Cliffs, New Jersey, pointed out what he believed to be six basic needs that every human being has. One, the need for love. Two, the need for security. Three, the need for creative expression. Four, the need for recognition. Five, the need for new experiences. Six, the need for self-esteem. To these six, I would add another basic need, the need for more life, the need to look forward to tomorrow and to the future with gladness and anticipation. Look forward and live. This brings me to another of my overbeliefs. I believe that life itself is adaptive, that life is not just an end in itself. It's not just an end in itself, but a means to an end. Life is one of the means we are privileged to use in various ways to achieve important goals. We can see this principle operating in all forms of life, from the amoeba to man. The polar bear, for example, needs a thick fur coat in order to survive in a cold environment. He needs protective coloration to stalk game and hide from enemies. The life force acts as a means to these ends and provides the polar bear with his white fur coat. These adaptations of life to deal with problems in the environment are almost infinite, and there is no point in continuing to enumerate them. I merely want to point out a principle in order to draw a conclusion. If life adapts itself in so many varied forms to act as a means toward an end, is it not reasonable to assume that if we place ourselves in the sort of goal situation where more life is needed, that we will receive more life? If we think of man as a goal striver, we can think of adaptation energy or life force as a propelling fuel or energy which drives him forward toward his goal. A stored automobile needs no gasoline in the tank, and a goal striver with no goal doesn't really need much life force. I believe that we establish this need by looking forward to the future with joy and anticipation, when we expect to enjoy tomorrow, and above all, when we have something important to us to do and somewhere to go. Create a need for more life. Creativity is certainly one of the characteristics of the life force, and the essence of creativity is a looking forward towards a goal. Creative people need more life force, and actuary tables seem to confirm that they get it. As a group, creative workers, research scientists, inventors, painters, writers, Philosophers not only live longer, but remain productive longer than non creative workers. Michelangelo did some of his best paintings when past 80. Goethe wrote Faust when past 80. Edison was still inventing at 90. Picasso, past 85, dominates the art world today. Wright, at 90, was still considered the most creative architect. Shaw was still writing plays at 90. Grandma Moses began painting at 79, etc., etc. This is why I tell my patients to develop a nostalgia for the future instead of for the past. If they want to remain productive and vital, develop an enthusiasm for life, create a need for more life, and you will receive more life. Have you ever wondered why so many actors and actresses manage to look far younger than their years and present a youthful appearance at age 50 and beyond? Could it not be that these people have a need to look young, that they are interested in maintaining their appearance, and simply do not give up the goal of staying young, as most of us do when we reach the middle years? We age not by years, but by events and our emotional reactions to them, says Dr. Arnold A. Hutschnecker. The physiologist Rubner observed that peasant women who work as cheap labor in the fields in some parts of the world are given to early withering, are given to, hey, boo boo, come on. Oh, oh, yeah. All right. So let's see. Oh, yeah. We age not by years, but by events and our emotional reactions to them, says Dr. Arnold A. Hutschnecker. The physiologist, Rubner, observed that peasant women who work as cheap labor in the fields in some parts of the world are given to early withering of the face, but they suffer no loss of physical strength and endurance. Here is an example of specialization in arguing. We can reason that these women have relinquished their competitive role as women. They have resigned themselves to the life of the working bee, which needs no beauty of face but only physical competence. Arnold A. Hutschnecker, The Will to Live, Revised Edition, Prentice Hall, Incorporate, Englewood Cliffs, New Jersey. Hutschnecker also comments on how widowhood ages some women, but not others. If the widow feels that her life has come to an end and she has nothing to live for, her attitude gives outward evidence in her gradual withering, her graying hair. Another woman, actually older, begins to blossom. She may enter into the competition for a new husband, or she may embark on a career in business, or she may do no more than busy herself with an interest for which perhaps she has not had the leisure until now. Faith, courage, interest, optimism, looking forward brings us new life and more life. Futility, pessimism, frustration, living in the past, and not only characteristics of old age, they contribute to it. Retire from a job, but never retire from life. Many men go downhill rapidly after retirement. They feel that their active, productive life is completed and their job is done. They have nothing to look forward to, become bored, inactive, and often suffer a loss of self esteem because they feel left out of things, not important anymore. They develop a self image of a useless, worthless, worn out hanger on, and a great many die within a year or so after retirement. It is not retiring from a job that kills these men. It is retiring from life. It is the feeling of usefulness, of use. It is the feeling of uselessness, of being washed up, the dampening of self esteem, courage, and self confidence, which our present attitudes of society help to encourage. We need to know that these are outmoded and unscientific concepts. Some 50 years ago, psychologists thought that the man's mental powers reached their peak at the age of 25 and then began a gradual decline. The latest findings show that a man reaches his peak mentally somewhere around the age of 35 and maintains the same level until well past 70. Such nonsense as "you can't teach an old dog new tricks" still persists despite the fact that numerous researchers have shown that learning ability is about as good at 70 as it is at 17. Outmoded and disproved medical concepts. Physiologists used to believe that any type of physical activity was harmful to the man over 40. We doctors are to blame as much as anyone for warning patients over 40 to take it easy and give up golf and other forms of exercise. 20 years ago, one famous writer even suggested that any man over 40 should never stand when he could sit, never sit when he could lie down, in order to conserve his strength and energy. Physiologists and MDs, including the nation's leading heart specialists, now tell us that activity, even strenuous activity, is not only permissible, but required for good health at any age. You are never too old to exercise. You may be too sick, or if you have been comparatively inactive for a long while, the suddenness of strenuous exertion may have a powerful stress effect, may be damaging and even fatal. So if you are not used to strenuous exertion, let me warn you to take it easy and take it gradually. Dr. T.K. Curtin, who has pioneered in the physical reconditioning of men from 45 to 80, suggests at least 2 years as a reasonable time for gradually acquiring the ability to indulge in really strenuous activity. If you are past 40, forget the weight you lifted when we were in college or how fast you could run. Begin by daily walking around the block. Gradually increase the distance to a mile, then two, and perhaps after 6 months, 5 miles. Then alternate between jogging and walking. First, jog half a mile a day, later, a full mile. Still later, you can add push ups, deep knee bends, and perhaps training with moderate weights. Using such a program as this, Dr. Curitin has taken decrepit, feeble men of 50, 60, and even 70 and had them running 5 miles a day at the end of 2 or 2.5 years. They not only feel better, but medical tests show an improvement in heart function and other vital organs. Why I believe in miracles. While confessing my overbeliefs, I might as well make a clean breast of it and say that I believe in miracles. Medical science does not pretend to know why the various mechanisms within the body perform as they do. We know a little bit about how and something about what happens. We can describe what happens and how the mechanisms functions within the body when the body heals a cut. But description is not explanation, no matter in what technical terms it may be couched. I still do not understand why or even the ultimate how when a cut finger heals itself. I do not understand the power of the life force which operates the mechanisms of healing, nor do I understand how that force is applied or just what makes it work. I do not understand the intelligence which created the mechanisms, nor just how some directing intelligence operates them. Dr. Alexis Carrel, in writing of his personal observations of instantaneous healings at Lourdes, said that the only explanation he could make as a medical doctor was that the body's own natural healing processes, which normally operate over a period of time to bring about healing, were somehow speeded up under the influence of intense faith. If miracles, as Dr. Carroll says, are accomplished by the acceleration of or the intensifying of natural healing processes and powers within the body, then I witness a small miracle every time I see a surgical wound heal itself by growing new tissue. Whether it requires 2 minutes or 2 months makes no difference insofar as I can see. I still witness some power at work which I do not understand. Medical science, faith, life all come from the same source. Dubious, the famous French surgeon, had a large sign in his operating room. The surgeon dresses the wound, God heals it. The same might be said of any type of medication, from antibiotics to cough drops. Yet, I cannot understand how a rational person can forego medical help because he believes it inconsistent with his faith. I believe that medical skill and medical discoveries are made possible by the same intelligence, the same life force, which operates through the media of faith healing. And for this reason, I can see no possible conflict between medical science and religion. Medical healing and faith healing both derive from the same source and should work together. No father who saw a mad dog attacking his child would stand idly by and say, I must do nothing because I must prove my faith. He would not refuse the assistance of a neighbor who brought a gun or club. Yet, if you reduce the size of the mad dog trillions of times and call it a bacterium or a virus, the same father may refuse the help of his doctor neighbor who brings a tool in the form of a capsule or a scalpel or a syringe. Don't place limitations on life. Which brings me to my parting thought. In the Bible, we are told that when the prophet was in the desert and hungry, God lowered a sheet from the heavens containing food. Only to the prophet it didn't look much like good food. It was unclean and contained all sort of crawling things. Whereupon God rebuked him Whereupon God rebuked him, admonishing him not to call unclean that which God had offered. Some doctors and scientists today turn up their noses at whatever smacks of faith or religion. Some religionists have the same attitude, suspicion, and revulsion concerning anything scientific. Everyone's real goal, as I said in the beginning, is for more life, more living. Whatever your definition of happiness may be, you will experience happiness only as you experience more life. More living means, among other things, more accomplishment, the attainment of worthwhile goals, more love experienced, given, more health and enjoyment. I believe that there is one life, one ultimate source, but that this one life has many channels of expression and manifests itself in many forms. If we are to get more living out of life, we should not limit the channels through which life may come to us. We must accept it, whether it comes in the form of science, religion, psychology, or whatnot. Another important channel is other people. Let us not refuse the help, happiness, and joy that others may bring us, or that we can give to them. Let us not be too proud to accept help from others, or too callous to give it. Let us not say unclean just because the form of the gift may not coincide with our prejudices and or our ideas of self-importance. The best self-image of all. Finally, let us not limit our acceptance of life by our own feelings of unworthiness. God has offered us forgiveness and the peace of mind and happiness that come with self acceptance. It is an insult to our Creator to turn our backs upon these gifts or to say that His creation, man, is so unclean that he is not worthy or important or capable. The most adequate and realistic self image of all is to conceive of yourself as made in the image of God. You cannot believe yourself the image of God deeply and sincerely with full conviction and not receive a new source of strength and power, says Dr. Frank G. Slaughter. The ideas and exercises in this book have helped many of my patients get more living out of life. It is my hope and my belief that they will do the same for you. And that, ladies and gentlemen, concludes Psycho Cybernetics. And like I told y'all before, this is why we do it. This is why we do it. All right? We do it for our babies. We do it for the next generation. All right? So y'all keep tuning in. Let's keep growing together. Let's keep doing some dope stuff together. So tomorrow we have shout out Dan. Shout out. How you doing? So tomorrow, 8 a.m., we start with the Enuma Elish, the Epic of Creation. Right? This is gonna be a powerful read. You got some time? Jump on in here. Let's learn together. Let's keep doing this. Let's get the truth, right? This is going to be the quintessential location for absolute truth, right? And we're doing it for the babies. We're doing it for the next generation, right? We want them to have free, right? Because it requires truth to make you free. Okay? So we want to give the babies truth so they can do some special stuff with whatever they do in their life, whatever their chosen disciplines are. Okay. All right, now y'all be blessed. Bye.